Alright, so today we're going to change it up a little bit and talk about comfort foods. One in particular is called Youvetsi. It's a Greek dish made with pasta. You can use beef bones, veal bones with a lot of meat on them, preferably like a bone-in chuck steak or veal shoulder. So salt and pepper, some olive oil, add any of the seasonings. This is just an eyeball recipe. Some paprika, we got our aromatics ready to go. We're gonna get them peeled, and then we're gonna give them a rough chop. If you guys are interested in doing this recipe or something similar to it, email me and I'll give you the, kind of banged out ingredients and directions. But this thing is something from the heart and from the soul, especially with all this cold weather. So here, I'm cutting a leek, and a leek is a giant, like, scallion type onion, but you have to open it up and give it a good wash because there's a lot of dirt on the inside. But a lot of soups and stews have that great flavor component. So you got your mise en place ready, you got your garlic, onion, celery, thyme tied up. Let's finish seasoning with a little more rosemary. Mix it really good. Alright, make sure you get every little piece mixed well because we're going to sear it in the pan. Alright, so these are beef short ribs cut, and that is just a beef spine bone just for more flavor. Okay, there's not too much meat on that one, but it's all about the flavor. So get your stuff ready to go. Add a couple of bay leaves. Those are those 2 leaves you see dry. Just make sure you take them out before you serve anybody that. So I have some tomato sauce. I prefer Scrofani Rienzi and some chicken stock. And why not? Let's add a little heat to it. Traditionally, Greeks don't add that, spiciness to their dishes. Okay, so we want to get a good sear on these, and what that is, if you're doing any kind of beef or anything like that, you want to get the color. So we got it seasoned up, and we're going to get them really nice and brown and caramelized on all the sides. Alright, make sure every little bit gets some love there, okay? Because here you're developing the flavors, you're starting to build the flavors. And if you guys have ever made any kind of a stew or an ossobuco or anything like that, this should be familiar to you. So make sure you have your fan on, which is a good amount of smoke. I like using that thin pan because it really brings the heat so I can get a nice sear. Okay? So just give it a toss, shake it up a little bit. It's going to take a couple minutes for all the sides to get nice and brown and toasty and crispy. So set up a spot for them to be drained into. So I just took the lid. I'm just going to put them off to the side to drain off any excess fat. But I'm not going to dump the fat in the pan, which is called fond. And it's a French term to deglaze that and get all of those tasty brown bits out and use it towards the sauce when you're braising the meat. Alright, so you can see it's a nice color. That's what we're looking for. No anemic, like pale colors. So there's that fond that we're going to save. And then we're going to toss in our veggies. And make sure it's on medium heat, not too high. We'll smoke it out. Just add a little oil. And then get those veggies cooking. So I mean, it's kind of difficult to work with one hand on the camera. One with the tongs, mixing it around, make sure everything gets scraped off the bottom of that pan. See, I got that whole garlic that I just chopped in half. But, season it up. That will help to sweat the veggies, help them to get more flavor going. Okay, that's some color on that garlic. That looks pretty good. So these are the flavors we're building here before we throw the beef ribs back in. Okay, we're going to let them cook together a little bit on the range. Just be careful when doing that maneuver, like I'm shaking it with one hand on the phone and one hand on the beef. Okay, so that's going to cook nice. Okay, I'm going to add my tomatoes and break them up with my spoon and add a little bit of chicken stock. You don't want this to be too watery. It's about a cup of chicken stock right there, because eventually it's going to cook down really low and slow, and then we're going to add some other aromatics and such. Okay? So make sure we take that thyme out at the end. That's where we tie it together really nicely. Then you're going to cover it and place it in an oven, low and slow, about 275 degrees for about 3.5 to 4 hours. This is one of those, old school comfort foods. Those are allspice berries that we use a lot in Greek cuisine, as well as cloves, but they're very strong. If you choose to use cloves, just 2 is big enough for that whole pan. They're very strong. Maybe about 20 of the berries. So in the meantime, we're gonna cook the pasta, and the pasta we're gonna use is orzo. It's very small grains of pasta. It's not rice. It looks like it. It has a very good mouthfeel. But since we're adding it to the dish and baking it, you want to boil it first. Make sure it's really nice and al dente, because if you just throw them in dry, it's going to suck up all the juice and you're going to have burnt pasta. You want to have a nice kind of like pasta baked with the beef and the bone. So check it, make sure it looks, throw it in your mouth if it's not too hot, chew on it. Alright, then get all steamy. Look at all this steam. I was wearing glasses at the time too, so I couldn't really see what was going on. Alright, so let it drain. Now, mix it up a little bit, get all that water out. Okay. At this point, a lot of people like to put oil and stuff. I'm just going to cool it down in about a second here with some ice water or some cold water. I don't have any. You could usually throw this in an ice bath if you want, but I'm just making sure that I cool that down so it stops cooking, because I want it to remain the same size. And it's similar to what we'll do when we do the chicken orzo rosemary soup. Okay, so I'm just gonna put a dash of olive oil, just a little bit, so it doesn't stick, and then give it a toss. And then I can put it back in that same pan and just set it aside. All right. So I think I'm gonna take a look at the meat now. Let's see where it's at. Okay. So this is about 3 hours in. Make sure you carefully take the lid off away from you, so you're not getting any steam coming up to burn your wrist. So that's what we're looking for. All that nice flavor and goodness, all that juice from the tomatoes. I mean, Youvetsi traditionally doesn't have jalapenos and other things like that, but just with any recipe, you want to change it up. So discard the garlic, or you can save on it and suck the cloves out, which I did. Alright, make sure you take out the thyme, and also make sure you find those 2 bay leaves, because it's very dangerous. If someone eats a bay leaf, it could cut their throat, their lining of their throat. People have choked on bay leaves, so you gotta be careful. Alright, so we're almost there. You can see that 1 or 2 bones are just completely, the meat has completely fallen off of them, because that one was mainly for flavor. So now we're dumping the orzo in there, okay? And then we're gonna carefully fold it in. I don't want to mash up the pieces of meat because they're so tender right now that if I go too hardcore with that spoon, it's really gonna rip the meat apart. But this is a nice hearty dish, especially on a cold day, and it's a very traditional, Sunday meal in Greece. Call it Yiouvetsi, Youvetsava, with different things. People make it with veal or preferably beef. But they've done it also with seafood, with octopus, with rabbit even. It's very good with octopus, especially when you use the ink. So let's fold it in nicely. You see the carrots still maintain their shape. So when we plate them, we could use them for color. Alright. So after I'm done mixing this nicely, I'm going to put it back in the oven, uncovered this time. And I'm going to let it bake. So there you can see a nice portion right there. But I'm going to let it bake a little bit so some of that liquid comes out before I serve it. So it absorbs a little bit of the liquid. Oh my God, how did he get there? Look at those eyes. Look at those little curls. Oh my God, booby. Then put a little feta cheese on it. Okay, it's good to go. It's usually served with maybe a little more tomato sauce. Okay. This is a very traditional. This is one of my comfort foods. I mean, it's a laborious process, but it's really worth it in the end. And if you guys want to try doing it for extra credit, let me know.